Okay, in this video, we're going to talk about how you can get a tech job with no experience and no degree. So, first, quick intro on the tech world. Everyone knows the tech world has a lot of opportunities, not just for financial improvements, but also gives you a mission and fulfillment in your life. And it also allows you to branch off into other things like starting your own business. And the tech world is really yours for the taking. Everyone knows that you can be self taught, you can do all these things that aren't the traditional paths and still get success in the tech world. And I think you can find a new job within even 3 months of learning. And yes, I mean that without any degree or prior experience. But in general, you could expect it to take maybe up to 6 months or even a year, but it's still a very short time frame in terms of delivering you a very nice job. So we're going to talk about in this video the three paths that I recommend the most for someone starting off with no experience and no degree. So the first one is going to be IT support positions. And this will be for anybody with zero experience, zero degrees. It'll also be the shortest time for you to land a job. And these still pay very well. And the other two hot fields we'll cover in this roadmap will be software development and DevOps cloud positions. So IT support is going to be the first roadmap, and this one can range in title names depending on the company, right? So this allows you to apply to any job positions listed as help desk, IT support, systems administrator, network administrator. Everyone knows that there's a lot of job titles for this overall field, and these don't need a degree for the majority of them. So the exact certificates you should take, I'm going to list out two certificates. The first one being the Google IT support certificate. So it's widely recognized. It's only $50 a month. You can get it on Coursera. And if you just search Google IT support certificate, you'll find this. I'll link the Google page down below in the description and you can check it out yourself. And in general, it should take you only about 6 months at 10 hours a week to complete this certificate. You could probably complete it much quicker in about 1 to 2 months if you do it full time. And again, like I mentioned, I'll link this, and it's a very beginner friendly certificate, right? So what you'll actually learn in this certificate is the basics and the fundamentals of technical support, the bits and bytes of computer networking, operating systems, some basic system administration, IT infrastructure, and IT security. So that is what you're going to learn in the Google IT support certificate. And with this one certificate, it opens you up to instantly a bunch of jobs, right? So this is the most needed certificate if you want to get a tech job with no degree and no experience. Once you have this, you can start applying to jobs. Next is going to be the Network Plus certificate. So this is a networking certificate, and it basically gives you the fundamentals and the basics of networking. And there will be minor overlap with the Google certificate. I recommend Professor Messer for prep. He has a YouTube channel and a website which gives you extremely detailed prep work there, and he has course notes available for purchase as well, very cheap. But overall, his YouTube channel is usually more than enough. So with these two certificates, they're basically all you'll need for an entry level IT job. So once you get these, start with the Google one first, then the CompTIA Network Plus. You'll basically be open to 80 to 90% of IT support positions. And all of these will pay relatively well. And some of them might even have remote options as well. So next position here that I'm going to recommend, but it's not for most of you. I'll quickly go through this one because it won't relate to most of you. But tech sales is a good option if you don't have technical knowledge, but you do maybe have a degree or a bachelor's degree, right? You don't need high level knowledge. You don't need technical knowledge, but it does give you an opportunity for great salaries, right? So if you're an outgoing person, you're personable, you're good at marketing and selling, and you have a degree, this could be a good choice for you. You can go into B2B or B2C, business to consumer, business to business. And there's a lot of jobs available in this field because obviously every tech company needs to sell. So to get into this, you just have to familiarize yourself with the basics of what you're interested in selling, whether that's cloud computing, cybersecurity, work on your communication skills, negotiation skills, and overall just a lot of these, if you're good with relationships, you'll already have these good fundamentals. So you'll start with an SDR role and then move into a BDR role maybe. And a lot of these positions are stepping stones to more senior sales roles. Okay, so the next one, this is basically going to be the meat of what a lot of you want to do. And it's kind of the stepping stone from the IT support position, right? So you go into this after you might have worked as a help desk or IT support role for maybe several months or even a couple years. This is what you'll go into next. And it's usually the best paid, right? And it offers the highest likelihood of success because there's so many positions available. The demand for software developers is insane and it hasn't slowed down at all and it's only accelerating. Now, obviously, job markets and economy markets change and things can become harder to get offers for, but overall, the demand is still there. So, in the beginning of your career as a software developer, you'll be more of a generalist, but you do have the choice to niche down later on the road. once you get more years of experience. So what do you do as a software developer? Everyone knows you code, you create software, you implement features, and you create software products. Pretty basic. So you have two options if you want to become a software developer. First one is bootcamp. So bootcamp, you might have heard about. It's depending on the bootcamp, it might be several months to maybe even a year of super intensive learning where you learn industry standard technical skills and you still pay relatively high amounts, but it is not nearly as expensive as a computer science degree. And there's benefits and downsides to both, but in general, the bootcamp will be quicker and cheaper. The computer science degree honestly would usually only be recommended if maybe you've already started your degree, you're close to finishing. But if you're in a completely unrelated degree or you're not planning to go to university at all or college, it might just be better to start with the bootcamp route. So let's go through the degree roadmap first. So the degree roadmap is you're usually going to get a computer science degree. That's the recommended one. And then you're going to start doing interview prep, which is mostly LeetCode, which I'll touch on in a later slide here. And then you get your internships, which is usually 4 months, usually in the summers of you working as a co-op student at these companies. You get valuable experience. And then finally, once you graduate, you get your full-time job. So a computer science degree isn't needed, right? You don't need to get one, but it definitely helps you get jobs quicker. People still value that credential, which is a computer science degree. And even though it's super saturated and there's a lot of computer science graduates, if you're able to follow every step I'm going to mention in the next slides here, plus you stand out and you're good at communicating and networking, you'll have no issues getting an entry level job just with a computer science degree. Don't do software engineering though. So a lot of colleges offer software engineering degrees, which you usually have to take some chemistry and physics with as well. Usually these are harder for no reason. It doesn't benefit you in any way in terms of actually becoming a software developer or engineer. A CS degree is usually always the better choice here. So entry level jobs. Okay, so 99% of the time, getting your first tech related job will basically be the inflection point, right? Once you get that first job, even if you stay there for a year or two making below average money, it'll be much easier to catapult yourself into new positions that are higher paying and more valued. And in general, a computer science degree provides you two benefits. Okay, so you get the credential, but the actual important part is that you also do get some very good fundamental knowledge, right? So you learn data structures and algorithms, which is easier to learn in a university setting if maybe you're not as self motivated, and you do gain overall problem solving and programming skills. So these skills you can definitely build on your own without a degree, but it definitely helps you build these skills. And like I mentioned before about internships, if you follow the computer science degree route, you should be looking to get internships. And at least one is good, but if you have over two, it'll make it much easier to get interviews for once you finally graduate. Okay, so now let's go into more detail about the bootcamp path. So there's a lot of boot camps out there. Some of the best ones here are Coding Dojo, Hack Reactor, Bloom Tech, formerly known as Lambda School. And overall, you can do a lot of research on these. There are some maybe more local to your area that might have partnerships with local tech companies. So I highly recommend checking those out as well. Those can kind of be shortcuts to landing a job. And there are free boot camps as well, but you will miss out on the credential because all these boot camps, although they're not like accredited universities, they still do give you quote unquote diplomas that you've graduated from their boot camp. So that is still useful to some extent when you place it on your resume. So why do people do boot camps? So boot camps are cost effective, they're quicker, and they do offer flexible options, right? So a normal computer science degree, you might have to do it in person. A boot camp, there's a lot of remote options, so you can do it from home even. And you get super specific industry relevant curriculum. So you actually gain practical knowledge, right? In a computer science degree, you're going to be doing a lot of abstract work, right? Learning a lot of things that you wouldn't actually apply in your day-to-day work life at a software engineering job. But in the boot camp, it's opposite. You learn very practical skills and skills that you could start using on day one of your software engineering job. And also you get the added benefit of having a community there of people that are hungry to get these jobs, and you can network with these people to make it easier in the future for yourself to find positions. So let's do a quick recap. Traditional degrees, they have their merits, they're still good. They still let you get jobs much easier, but obviously they will be more expensive and they will take more time. 4 years is a lot of time. And in general, it's not really worth it, especially if you're past the college age. Coding boot camps, on the other hand, are much more direct, much more flexible, and much more affordable to get into the tech industry, but still expect to spend a few $1,000s on these. Okay, so now the important part about once you've got some type of credential, some skill sets built, you have to leak code. Now, what do I mean by leak code? What is leak code? So leak code is coding questions. It's kind of just a synonym because leak code is a branded website that offers you a platform to complete coding questions on. But that's just what people call it when they're talking about these interview coding questions. So the reason for solving these questions is very simple and why you need to study them. Tech companies have very stringent and difficult interviews depending on the level of the company, right? So the lower the salaries, the easier the company to get into. Usually the interviews will be easier. And then the more high paying positions will require much harder coding questions and much more of them. So what it usually looks like, if you're unfamiliar with this, is during an interview, your hiring manager or interviewer will share a coding link with you, and they'll basically give you a question. They can either write it out or just speak it verbally, and they expect you to solve that question using code, using any programming language of your choice. And in the process, you can ask questions and then you can start coding. And optimally, you would communicate your thought process while you're coding and explain the time and space complexity of your algorithm. You might not know what that is yet, but eventually you will. And what this really means is you need to solve these coding questions. You need to practice these because they all also will make you a better programmer, right? So it's essential for interview prep, but they do also help you in your day-to-day job to some extent. So how do you prep for leak code, right? Ideally, at this point in your leak code prep, you would already be well versed in one programming language, right? Let's say you got a computer science degree or you did a boot camp. At this point, you at least know Python or Java, C++, whatever language you've learned, right? You're comfortable with the basics of that language. It's very important to be comfortable with the language before you start jumping into solving these coding questions because you will be super lost. You won't be able to grasp anything, and you're going to kind of be biting off more than you can chew. So, leak code topics. The thing that makes this easier when you're prepping for coding interview questions is all of them they all fit into a set of common categories, right? So you can pattern match, you can categorize these questions so that if you do enough questions from each category, you'll be well equipped to at least get partial answers for any coding question you come across. You can recognize, oh, this question uses arrays. I have to answer it with an array, right? Or this one needs hash maps, so I will use hash maps. And obviously, it won't always 100% one-to-one carry over every question, but for the most part, you can pattern match and it makes it actually achievable, right? So what are the best resources to follow for solving coding questions, to get good at coding questions? At the time of this course release, I would recommend NeetCode 150. So NeetCode is basically a YouTuber. He has a YouTube channel, but he also has a website here which covers every topic for coding and data structures and algorithms questions. We're not affiliated, but we just do think it's a great course. And you can access the 150 questions he lists in there for free. You don't need the membership, but it does help you because he does provide explanations in there. So ideally, you shouldn't wait to start applying for jobs until you feel confident at coding questions. You should start about a quarter or halfway through, right? Because it will take time for you to even get interviews and to schedule interviews. So start lead coding, start practicing coding questions, but also start applying shortly after. So the software developer overview here. So you have to understand algorithms, data structures, basic computer organization. And I recommend you start with beginner friendly languages. I know some people will tell you you have to learn C or assembly or C++ to be a good programmer. Kind of ignore that. Don't worry about that. Start with the simple ones that actually get used a lot more. And it makes it also easier for you in interviews. Things like Python or JavaScript. And the other things you need to learn, which again, you would cover this in the degree route or the bootcamp route, but just a quick overview here. Version control like Git, front-end development, back-end development, databases, testing. Just a quick overview of the things you would want to learn. So I already have a resume video on my YouTube channel. I'll link it down below. I went over these exact same slides already, so I won't repeat them, but your resume is very important, and go watch that video after this entire video to learn about how to make a great resume, okay? So I'll just quickly skip this, watch that video. Almost there. Okay, applying to jobs. I also created a video for this. So applying to jobs can be very difficult, and there's a lot of options you need to follow. So again, I'll link that video I made already on this YouTube channel about how to apply to jobs and all the strategies like employee referrals, direct connections with recruiters, direct outreach, and overall you have to be prepared for failure. I also talked about that. So go watch that video, okay? And you do have to get used to failure in tech. It's very difficult in the beginning, but you have to keep pushing and you have to be able to differentiate yourself. So be a good communicator, be someone that can stand out. So another thing is, if you are looking for jobs, you have to market yourself well. You have to make a great LinkedIn profile detailing all your skills, experiences, and I also recommend you make a portfolio website or blog. So what you do with that is you simply link your resume, your GitHub, your LinkedIn, your contact info, side projects, basically anything that can be somewhat impressive within your life. And also, I would recommend having a blog section because if you are learning things, maybe even coding questions or programming languages or frameworks, you can document your learnings while you're learning them because it'll help you learn. And then it also showcases something, right? It showcases that you're trying to make efforts, trying to learn new things. And by doing that, employers appreciate that because they can see that you're actually interested. You're not just trying to make a quick buck trying to get into tech. So you don't need to do a lot for this. You just show that you're making an effort to learn new tech. And again, I know a lot of you might be tempted to use ChatGPT for this to make super basic blogs, but they won't fall for that. It is very obvious. So you have to be genuine in this. Okay, how do you interview? In terms of not just talking about coding questions and things like that, how do you actually, the more abstract concepts of interviewing? So preparation is everything, right? I always recommend that you have to fall back to what you know, your muscle memory. In an interview, you will be the most stressed you've ever been answering a coding question, for example. It's going to be a much different environment. And you can't expect to come up with new breakthroughs and innovations during an interview. And you should expect to perform at your worst during an interview, which is why I say you have to fall back to muscle memory. So you should be able to answer a question that you've seen before like that, snap of a finger, right? It should be so simple because you know it like the back of your hand. You don't even have to really think about it. You can't expect to learn new things during the interview. And again, you have to practice, 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 do mock interviews, do interviews in general. There's websites for this, pramp.com. Use friends, use family, it doesn't matter. You just have to practice mock interviews a lot. And remember, be personable, communicate as much as possible, be proactive, right? Don't expect the interviewer to lead everything. You can take initiative in answering questions or even providing questions, but also don't ramble, right? Be concise, be short. Another roadmap here that I'm going to talk about quickly, it's a slightly more experienced path that you usually take. So it's not exactly for beginners, but it is something you can transition to after going from maybe IT support or a software developer. So it's DevOps. So DevOps is basically a combination of kind of cultural abstract concepts, but also real skills and practices and tools that people use to basically improve the way a company delivers software at a scale, basically. So DevOps is basically fused between development and operations, and it kind of combines those two teams into one. So it is in very high demand. It does pay very well. You have a very versatile skill set. You know a lot of things, and overall, people have a lot of high job satisfaction in this because, again, like I said, you're always kind of doing something different, something new, and you are kind of more respected in this field because you're very important to the company. So, what do you learn for DevOps in terms of a quick, basic roadmap here? Operating systems, networking, any type of scripting language, usually version control like Git, CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment, and infrastructure as code. So you have to learn all of these things as a super short, basic roadmap if you want to get into DevOps. And very important for you to get are AWS certifications. So they're very valuable in the tech industry, whether you're a software developer, maybe even in IT support, or going into DevOps, right? They're relatively simple to get. They are somewhat tedious to learn, but you will stand out if you have an AWS certificate on your resume. So, what are the cert paths? So, I'll link the PDF file here with all of the cert paths. What I recommend in general for 99% of you watching this video, you should get the Cloud Practitioner certificate first, then move on to the AWS Developer, and then finally AWS DevOps. But even just getting the Cloud Practitioner certificate will be enough for 95% of you. And there are amazing Udemy courses for prep to get these certificates because you will have to prepare a decent amount before you actually complete the certificate exam. So there's very high rated bestseller ones on Udemy. So go check those out. I'll link those as well in the description of this video. Okay, so more general career tips, right? This is kind of something that's new, of course. So, and it's an unfair edge, which is ChatGPT. So you have to use ChatGPT to learn how to code. It'll just make it much easier for you. Obviously you don't have to, but I just recommend, you're kind of just putting yourself at a disadvantage if you don't, right? So it can generate code snippets for you. You can literally ask it any question and you can genuinely learn from it, right? So it'll give you great explanations on how things work and why things work. But I don't want you to use this as something as a cheat code to just give you code, right? Because then you're not going to be learning anything. Okay, so when you do get your first job, you have to make sure you make a great first impression. The first few months, even, are very important, and you have to be willing to put in extra work because that's where you're going to learn the most and you'll have the most to learn. And it's also where people start building that trust with you. Once you establish that trust with your team and your managers, they'll be much more willing to cut you some slack further down the line. So, first job questions, right? You have to ask a lot of questions if you want to succeed in your tech career. You shouldn't be asking Googleable questions like very basic ones that you can just Google online, but questions about specific company services, processes. You can't be afraid to ask these, right? And almost always attempt it to answer it yourself. But if you're just stuck there, you're not really making any productive progress. You're just wasting your own time and your team's time, right? So always ask questions, and this is how you'll outlearn and outpace most employees. You will definitely be too shy and too nervous. You'll be scared of feeling stupid or looking stupid when you ask these questions. But trust me, if you can push through that, you will excel beyond what you think is possible. Just ask a lot of questions. And you have to be open minded, right? Be open to everything. Once a few weeks pass, you'll start getting comfortable and you might try to stick to the things you know at in your company, in your team. But if you can push outside that comfort zone and keep taking on new projects, new features, that's how you really make that jump from being a junior to a senior. And finally, you have to relax. So, a lot of you might be surprised by the amount of support you can actually get from your coworkers, right? It's not going to be like during school, like you feel alone. In a actual office environment, or whether you're remote or in office, people are there to support you, right? It's not a competition. People want you to succeed because you're going to help the company, right? So no one's waiting to laugh at you once you screw up. They want you to succeed. As long as you're just putting your best effort in and actually proactively being there to help your team members, they'll be more than happy to help you. Okay. Another big one here is imposter syndrome. So it's basically inevitable for you to develop imposter syndrome. It's when you doubt your skills and abilities, and it's very normal and common in tech because there's so much to learn in tech. And I don't mean that it's super hard to learn the basics of tech, but there's just so much to learn to the point where you think you're always missing something. But you just have to think of it this way. If you have the job, you're not an imposter. That means you've passed the hiring standards. That means you've passed what the manager deems to be a good employee. And that feeling, I guarantee, will fade once you start accomplishing some success in your new position. But you'll always have something new to learn, right? So you will, to some extent, always have a tiny bit of imposter syndrome. The final thing here too is you want to niche down and specialize eventually, right? So you want to start thinking about what niche and field you want to actually specialize in, whether that's front end development, back end development, maybe cybersecurity. And if you do job hop, make sure you're actually getting sizable salary bumps. So at least 20% would be a good kind of universal standard to aim for. But also aim for progressively better companies, right? So don't jump from, let's say, a Facebook to some local insurance company because it might look like you're not capable of handling great workloads, or it might look like you're kind of backsliding in your career. You want to be constantly progressing as a tech worker. And the upsides of job hopping, like I've kind of mentioned already, are rapid salary growth, diverse experience, and you stay market relevant. But if you do this too often, if you change new jobs every 6 months to a year, you only get a very shallow learning curve. You can't really pick up on long-term things that is required if you want to become a senior engineer because you're leaving too early, right? You're not giving yourself a chance to actually pick up on complex topics. And it also makes you look like you're unstable, right? People are going to be more worried that you are not going to stay at their company, right? And it's harder to build relationships as well. So if you got to the end of this video, I want to say good job. You basically now know the shortcut roadmap to getting your first tech job. And if you do have any questions or success stories, email us at reply@overemployed.ca. Again, this was going to be a part of a course, but I just decided to release this video for free for the entire YouTube channel. And if you do have any desire to become overemployed with a tech job or any job, feel free to check out the Overemployed Masterclass in the description box below in the pinned comment. That helps you stay overemployed for the long term, so check that out. And thanks again for watching this video. Like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.